busiest weekend of college basketball. Only one ranked team played Saturday. Only 4 ranked teams played Sunday, but it was still a great weekend for a couple of programs that we've talked about a lot on the podcast over the past year or so. Great weekend for Villanova, great weekend for FAU, and that's where I want to start. Both programs entered the season with high expectations. FAU was 10th in the preseason AP Top 25 poll. Villanova, number 22 after a disappointing year one under Kyle Neptune. Then both went out early this season and lost as heavy favorites to unranked opponents. FAU lost its third game to Bryant. Villanova lost its third game to Penn. Then both bounced back impressively. FAU beat Butler, A&M, and Virginia Tech to win the ESPN Events Invitational, blasted Virginia Tech 84-50 on Sunday, one day after Virginia Tech handed Iowa State its first loss of the season. Meantime, Villanova won the battle for Atlantis by beating Texas Tech, North Carolina, and Memphis, blasted Memphis 79-63 in the title game. Yes. That the Wildcats actually led at one point by 35. Deadleg, that's a long setup. I apologize, but how pleased should Villanova fans and FAU fans be with the way their teams bounce back from rough losses by beating multiple quality opponents to win prominent in-season tournaments?
This was the only place to start on this Sunday episode. And if you're watching live, you've got the poll question up. Which team do you trust more moving forward, FAU or Villanova? We'll circle back with those results later in the show. I think I would say FAU at this point, but I want to start with Nova. You use the exact same adjective that I did in my notes here. Blasted Memphis 79-63. For Villanova to get past them and make it that definitive, I thought was pretty important. So I'll open on Nova and then toss it to you before we get to FAU. I think that Villanova has responded fairly brilliantly to the loss against Penn because they not just won the battle for Atlantis, they also had the destruction of Maryland. They have held their past 4 opponents to 63.3 points in that stretch, kept their opponents shooting under 50% from the field, and they've gotten good balance. Like, there are 4 guys that they need to be the guys that can guide the ship. Have stepped up and are averaging. Justin Moore, 15.6 per game. Eric Dixon, even with his career best a couple nights ago, he's at 14 a game. TJ Bamba, the transfer from Washington State, he's at 10.1. Tyler Burton, the transfer from Richmond, he's at 10 points a game. I think all 4 of those guys need to be in double-digit land from a scoring perspective to give Villanova an actual shot at playing up to preseason hype. And preseason hype is top 20 level kind of team, vying for top 3 status in the Big East and getting back into the conversation where you are expected to have a healthy NCAA tournament seed and make it at least to the second weekend in the tournament. The reason why I would be encouraged if I'm a Villanova fan is if you look at their wins right now, GP, 5 of the 6 have been beatdowns, absolute beatdowns. They are showing up and making statements. The only one where they had to squeak by UNC and OT in the second game of Battle for Atlantis, but otherwise, they've been good so far. Now, it is going to be a journey because they've got St. Joe's. They got a Big 5 game coming up. They've got at K-State. They're home versus a good UCLA team, and then they're at Creighton for the next 4. So if you're a Villanova fan, you're probably feeling pretty good, but you're at least aware of the fact that the schedule is not exactly lightening up moving forward, and there's no guarantee that Villanova gets out of that better than 2-2. It can, maybe it should, but it's actually going to get pretty bumpy here over the next couple of weeks as you have finals in addition to a lot of other stuff. But they've steadied themselves and are certainly a top 25 team. What are your impressions on Nova, and where do you have the Wildcats ranked as we prepare to wrap up Sunday night?
Well, first, let me ask you this. If you were Kyle Neptune and somebody offered you 3-1 over the next 4, you'd take it like that?
And 3-1 or chance going 4-0, you take 3-1 with that schedule, in my opinion, yes.
Yeah, you take although they should probably, I don't know, like clearly favored over St. Joe's. Let's just look at the KenPom projections. That'll give us an idea of what we're looking at with
2 road games in there, though. I would take 3-1 with 2 road games.
Yeah, so projected as a 15-point favorite over St. Joe's, as a slight 2-point favorite on the road at Kansas State, 6-point favorite at home over UCLA, 3-point underdog on the road against Creighton. So only technically, according to KenPom, going to be an underdog, at least based on those projections, in one of the next 4. But I would take 3-1 and be thrilled. I'd take 3-1. I would sacrifice the opportunity to go 4-0 if you'd promise me 3-1. I've got Villanova up to 17th in the top 25 and 1. I had dropped them out, obviously, after the loss to Penn. But when they bounced back, and I'm glad you mentioned that, they didn't just bounce back with the battle for Atlantis. Before that, trashed Maryland. And so it's only year 2 and it's only early in year 2, but I do think it was fair for Villanova fans to start wondering, like, all right, where are we going with this thing? Because last season was a disappointment, and there are reasons that can explain why. Justin Moore didn't play till deep into the season. They had injury issues. It just never clicked. Even when Justin Moore got back, and you were waiting for it to like take, it never really took off. They were just an average basketball team all season long, and then you open this season, third game with a loss to Penn. And as I had noted in the top 25 and one, the morning after that loss, Cal Neptune had now lost 5 times to sub 100 KenPom teams in his first 37 games as head coach at Villanova. Jay Wright had only lost 2 times to sub 100 KenPom teams, like in the last 300 and something games that he coached at Villanova. So clearly they were taking losses under Cal last season and then this season against Penn that they just hadn't taken regularly or often at all under Jay Wright. And that's reason to wonder, like, okay, I understand why we made this hire, but did we get it right? And so for Cal to bounce back from that, and, we'll see where it goes. But I think if you're a Villanova fan, you feel just a lot better about everything, knowing that, okay, we're going to be back in the AP poll. We've won a tournament that had other really good teams in it, like Arkansas, North Carolina, Memphis. Blasted a Memphis team everybody was falling in love with. If I'm Cal Neptune, I feel like I've stabilized this thing a little bit. And if I'm a Villanova fan, I feel a little better about where this Cal Neptune thing might be heading than I did, say, 2 weeks ago.
We'll see where both those team seasons go, because Memphis, on balance, overall, like, the game wasn't good for them there, but the trip, all things considered, you had some good stuff if you're Memphis. I wonder how those team seasons will splinter off in different directions, or for better, for worse, or maybe neither. But damn,
well, one's about to play in the Big East and one's about to play in the AAC.
Correct. And I watching that game, I was certainly hoping for something really competitive. And I had, on the show, I picked Memphis to win the battle for Atlanta. So I was curious to see if he was going to be able to get up for the third time in 3 days. And it was a laugher from 10 minutes in. It
looked like Memphis thought they won a championship on Friday.
It was startling to see. I mean, Nova just ran him out of the gym. So good on Nova. And it's the kind of win, frankly, like, Jay Wright was there a couple of years ago. You expect Villanova to put on that kind of performance. This is really important for Neptune, as you just said, with his tenure there, I think, for that locker room and for that fan base. But FAU's, that's the parallel, GP, because you had 2 programs, preseason hype, as you mentioned before, and FAU losing to Bryant, maybe even more of an eye-opener than a Big 5 loss for Villanova.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's, frankly, it's Bryant, and they just promoted a coach earlier to win the ESPN Events Invitational, and to do so, Butler, A&M, Virginia Tech, so 3 power conference teams did it, averaging 90.3 points per game. So I'm feeling good, obviously, about both these teams, but to our poll question, I would lean FAU just a little bit more. Just mentioned Memphis because of conference affiliation, and FAU will take losses in league play, and it's got more coming in non-con, and they got good games still remaining on the schedule. I would expect them to lose at least 1 more game before they get to American Athletic Conference play there, but I thought this was an important weekend for the program now, and kind of big picture. This was only the second, it's a minor thing, but this stuff matters to programs. It's only the second time FAU's ever won an MTE in the regular season. They get that done, and they had a 19-0 run from the end of the first half, and it bled into the second half against Virginia Tech. It was just as much of a laugher as Villanova's title game win that it was able to pull off there. Elijah Martin, who was dealing with a stress fracture, GP, he may well still be dealing with that, because stress fractures are funky injuries, and they can be really debilitating, kind of slow killers from a production standpoint. But if he is, it didn't show whatsoever. Elijah Martin, particularly in their Friday game, I guess it was, he was outrageous. He finished averaging 18 and change over the course of 3 games, hit 10 3-pointers. He is FAU's best player. He showed it. But overall, FAU shooting has gotten back to where it needs to be. I'll send it back on over to you. I just wanted to bring this up because I was looking at it before. So right now, as they are 6 games into the season, Parrish, Janelle Davis shooting, and again, 6 games, I get it. But still, he's hitting 52% of his 3-pointers. Brian Greenlee, who is like the secret weapon, like Greenlee will sneakily hit some big shots for FAU with regularity. He's at 40% from 3-point range. Jalen Gaffney, 58.3% on 12 attempts this season. Brandon Weatherspoon is at 41.7%. And Elijah Martin right now, who's having a delayed start, He's at 33.3%, and you know that his ceiling is even higher. So a very, very important turn of events here for FAU as it's able to shake off the Bryant loss and then go win an ESPN Events Invitational definitively and with really good offense over 3 power conference teams.
One of the points I'd made about Memphis, I think it holds true with FAU, is like Memphis needed, like if you're Kansas or Baylor or Michigan State, a Big 10 school, a Big 12 school, yes, it'd be awesome to be great in November, December, but it's really important that you're great or, whatever you're going to be in January, February, March. Because you can get away with it in November, December, because it's a lot of bye games typically, and you can't get away with it in January, February, and March because in those leagues you're getting tested, at least once a week, sometimes twice. Whereas with FAU and Memphis, they needed to be better in November, December than they are in January, February, March, because they can be like whatever these teams are going to be. Like, let's say Memphis, FAU can have at some point this season are going to be here. Just play along. Mm-hmm. They need to be here now to win events like this and stack these quality wins. Because when you get into your league, you're not going to have very many opportunities for quality wins. And even if you play at a level below what your best is, you're going to still be able to win most of those games. Like Memphis and FAU don't have to be sharp to beat most schools in the AAC, but they need to be sharp to beat enough quality opponents in November, December to build an at-large resume if they need it. And Memphis was doing that really well up until the Villanova game, and FAU has been doing that really well ever since the Bryant game. And then I imagine those two and somebody else, North Texas, UAB, we'll see, is going to emerge as like a, maybe a bubble type team. But for the most part, that league's bad, and there's a lot of bad teams in it. And I think Memphis and FAU are largely going to roll through it. They'll both take a stupid loss here or there because that's basketball. But I think the hardest stuff for those schools, it's stuff that's happening now or will happen in the next month or so. After that, everything lightens up a bit. But, if I'm an FAU fan, I feel, because this must be tough. You're a Florida Atlantic fan, however many of them there are. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever talked about you ever until last season. And then now people can't stop talking about you, but it's mostly like, they're not as good as their number beside their name, or it was a fluky Final Four. To have to carry that around every day and then lose to Bryant and it just gets, taken up another level. Everybody who was a FAU skeptic can jump on it, and boy, they did. To be able to stabilize it the way they did, and just smash Virginia Tech. Beat them bad.
Yes,
I think you feel real good. Like, is FAU going to go to another Final Four? Who knows? Will they ever really be one of the 5 best teams in the country? Like a lot of us had, or some of us had them ranked in the preseason. Who knows? But they're good. And they spent 3 days in Orlando, or 3 games in Orlando, really hammering that point home.
Would you, if it's a stock, which one would you buy more moving forward? All things considered, conference affiliation, likelihood to be a higher seed, whatever. Maybe that's how you kind of boil it down. GP, FAU or Nova, which one would you say is more likely to have the better seed on Selection Sunday?
Just the way they treat FAU, I'd say probably Nova.
Okay.
The way they give them last season, a 9.
That was a joke, but yeah.
That was a joke, but that is what they did.
I know.
So are they going to do?
FAU's resume is already like, you get it. You have that kind of season. You get invited to an MT like this, which isn't even like a top 3 MTE this season. But look at what happened. You get 3 power conference wins on a neutral floor. They already got a better non-con resume right now than they had all of last season. Granted, they're going to take more L's here. They still got Illinois, Arizona coming in non-con. Plus, they got Liberty and Charleston. Like, they have other viable mid-majors. Those losses won't be great on the resume if they happen, because those are both actually happening at FAU's gym. But if it comes to seeding, that's a tough one, man. I will still slightly lean FAU. I thought this was a very, very important reinforcement of how good this team is. They kicked those asses all up and down that bracket and going 3-0 in.
Well, let me split hairs a little bit. How about this? We accept this. I think FAU is the safer pick to make the NCAA tournament because they've already built an at-large resume, and they're gonna add some more quality wins, and then they're gonna cruise through their league for the most part. FAU is gonna be fine. Villanova, I think, is going to be fine, but that's a team that when you could get in the Big East and it's just like, bam, you just got swept by Creighton. Bam, you just got swept by Marquette. You just got swept by UConn. That won't happen, I don't think. But like, you could just get beat down pretty good in there, and you're looking up and going, man, are we going to make it? So FAU, safer pick to make the tournament. But if they both make the tournament, I would have Villanova as the higher seeded team.